All right, viruses make a living by doing what? By hijacking cells. Yes, they do. How does that work? Well, let's use our little green fella here as an example. This is a virus that specializes in attacking bacteria cells, called a bacteriophage. And actually, here's a picture of them. One of these little guys taken with an electron microscope. They are extremely small. This would be extremely high magnification, possible only I say possible. Anything in this, even in this ballpark, is possible only with an electron microscope. Certainly not with a light microscope. So back to Mr. Green guy here. First of all, he's not a cell, and you say, well, sure looks pretty complicated to me. Well, yes, he does look pretty complicated, but he's a whole lot less than a cell. This little virus boils down, this little bacteriophage boils down to two parts. These are the two components of almost all viruses. So before we continue, let's see what those are. And so there's an outside component that is a protein coat. A protein coat called, as it shows right here, is called the capsid. And so it can take very fancy forms like this little green rocket ship here. Of course, it's not really green, but anyway, take very fancy forms like this little rocket ship, but it boils down to a very fancy protein coat. What's inside the protein coat? What's inside the protein coat is genetic material. Genetic material. You say, Professor, why don't you just say DNA? I see DNA in this diagram. Well, some viruses, the genetic material is DNA, and other viruses, it is RNA. So the genetic material is either DNA or RNA. And that's all our little guy has there. He's got a very fancy protein coat that looks like a rocket ship, and he's got DNA as its genetic material. While I'm at it, let me put the third component of some viruses. The third component would be outside the protein coat, and the third component would be a fatty membrane. A fatty membrane. That fatty membrane is called the envelope. And we'll see that on the HIV virus. But our little fella here, he's just got two. He's got the protein coat, looks like a rocket ship, and genetic material, in this case, DNA. So, how does this little guy, this bacteriophage, how does it attack a bacteria cell? How does it move in and take over? Not by totally, completely, 100% entering the bacteria cell, not the whole rocket ship, just injecting its DNA. And what happens when it injects its DNA? This diagram illustrates it very nicely. Here's the DNA being injected, and it's only got a few genes, 5 or 10 genes maybe. And what do those genes code for? They code for manufacturing viral parts, hooking those viral parts together into new viruses, and then coding for an enzyme that pops open the bacteria cell. And what do these new viruses do? They go floating off to infect other bacteria. So what does the bacteria cell get as its reward for incubating all these baby viruses, so to speak? It gets death. It gets death. That's not good. Now, bacteria are not defenseless. They can fight this off a lot of the time. What did we talk about being self-defense against the DNA of invading viruses? Oh yeah. What was that again? Restriction enzymes. Restriction enzymes would cut up the DNA of invading viruses a lot of the time, but not all the time. And so when maybe too many viruses attack a particular bacteria cell, then the bacteria cell maybe can't chop it all up, and some of it does exactly what we see here. And so, what's the theme here? Our little virus is not alive. He makes a living, so to speak, though, by doing what? Or he becomes active, I should say. Becomes active what? When it gets either its DNA or the whole virus or part of the virus gets inside a living cell. All right, that's it.